The Milwaukee Bucks got a comfortable 25-point win over the Pelicans for their sixth straight win. And with the other results in the East tonight, the Bucks have something to play for in these last two games against Detroit. We'll discuss what's at stake and more on the other side of the intro.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network and co-host of the Technical Foul podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod, founder of brewhoop.com, and we appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Plus, you can catch us in newsletter form as well. Make sure you head over to lockedondaily.com and sign up for the free Milwaukee Bucks Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode is also brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Frank, it was a sleepy start for the Bucks in this one against the Pelicans. I believe the Pelicans took an early lead with like 3-2. Bucks regained the lead again in the second quarter when it was like 47-46. Took another lead a little bit later on in the quarter, and they did not relinquish it after that point. So for you, really quick before we get to the details of the game, at what point in this game were you feeling confident that the Bucks had the win? Because for me, it was a stretch in the third when Giannis just kind of scored like two tough and ones, and it was like a 9-point lead, and I was kind of like, okay, it's feeling all right at this point. And then seeing guys leave the bench early for showers, I was like, okay, it better be comfortable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at who was available for the Pelicans, and I mean, I will say this: I mean, they were frisky and made shots, for a lot of the night in New Orleans the other night. So I was probably not as dismissive of the names as I was seeing the Lester Quinones and Kenzie Brooks. I don't know, Imani Brooks. I don't know, some guy named Brooks who made some shots the other night as well. Reeves made some shots. I don't even know these dudes' first names for the most part, but
Alfred Payton was the most famous, known one.
Yeah. Matkovich was
on a poster tonight.
Yeah. Apparently he was too good, so they benched him. I don't know. I didn't really understand that, but I mean, just looking at who was available and knowing that, when it was announced that Giannis was going to play tonight, I was probably like the least stressed I've ever been about the Bucks being able to get a win. I mean, as much as I have sort of that, that tinge of paranoia that you and many of our listeners are well aware of, I was just like, yeah, they're not going to lose this game. So I wasn't really that. I was too anxious early on, even though they had, yet another first quarter. You and Justin talked about it, either yesterday or the day before, how they've had this weird first quarter sort of doldrums, even during this winning streak, when the fourth quarter has been great and the first quarters have been bad. And I mean, it wasn't a disastrous first quarter, but I think they were down 19-11 at one point, and then and we're missing kind of all their threes, and then sort of started to perk up a little bit. So I mean, I was never really that concerned. And obviously with like the Pelicans having, did they have, how many guys did they have? 7, 8 guys? I think
8 active players tonight.
They really were able to field a team. They had like emergency signings basically to be able to not forfeit. So it sort of was like, well, the longer this game goes on, like the more it's also going to work in the Bucks' favor, especially with the depth that they've been showing lately. So, I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot of, analysis we really need to do about this game. They eventually started to make some threes. That was kind of, say, like the main part of the first quarter was the Bucks just missed a lot of open threes, and the Pelicans actually made some of theirs. And, I think Giannis just sort of began to exert his will a bit more as the game went on. In that third quarter, especially, right, he sort of decided, all right, I'm just going to, come work the baseline and get multiple and ones. And, the playmaking, only 5 assists tonight, but again, no turnovers for the second straight game. His turnover rate has been like extremely impressive here over this stretch. And so, for him to only have to play 25 minutes. And then I did have that moment, Camille, where I was like, what if the Pelicans go on a crazy run? Because it's not like you can afford to lose this game. Like somebody, I saw some person on Twitter was like, oh, well, they were talking about like why Giannis left the game. Like, oh well, because of the Pistons win, like this game didn't mean anything. It's like no, this game meant a lot. It was just that they felt like they had it in the bag, and fortunately that was the case. And the Pelicans, as a franchise, are happy to lose games right now. Everything worked out for everybody, and I don't know what the media availability ultimately ended up being tonight, given everybody left seemingly early. But I know Jock Rivers was joking about how nobody was going to be available in the locker room after his post game presser. So onward and upward. And I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this weekend's games, but with all everything that was kind of going wrong there during that losing streak, to turn it around and win 6 straight. Obviously, some of these games have been against the Pelicans and not the most difficult competition, but to mix in obviously like a win like they had against the Timberwolves. I mean, 6 wins in a row for this version of the Bucks, which has been so up and down. Like, I'll gladly take it. And now I'm just going to cross my fingers that we get ideally 2 more, hopefully at least 1 more.
Yeah, absolutely on that one. In this game, because I do want to spend some time talking a bit about what we've seen over this win streak, as well as preview what's up ahead for the Bucks this weekend against the Pistons. But in this game against the Pelicans, what player impressed you the most? Because like it was a comfortable win for the Bucks in this one. Giannis, 28 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. You mentioned the fact no turnovers again for him in this one. Even though his streak of triple doubles now ends at 3 after tonight, where he couldn't get those 10 assists, but an amazing game from Giannis. Another strong game from Kevin Porter Jr. 4th straight 20-plus point game for KPJ. aka Scooter. I saw they were trying to get his Japanese nickname. Like, they're really pushing that for him now. But I'm going to go ahead with Scooter because I'm a fan of Living Single. And anybody who watched Living Single knows about Scooter. So that's the nickname I'm going with for Kevin Porter Jr. But he finished tonight 20 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 steals. First time in his career he's ever had 5 steals in back-to-back game. I mean, he just kind of came in this game with some instant energy. And we've talked about it, but his play is so important going forward to this team, especially without a timeline for Damian Lillard's return. But who stood out to you in this game against the Pelicans?
Yeah, as you were teeing that up, I mean, Giannis by default, right? But again, we've been giving Giannis his flowers, so I guess we can go back to like taking him for granted a little bit. But almost wasn't fair given the competition tonight. But yeah, I think among the other guys, I mean, for Kevin Porter Jr. to have 4 straight 20 point. I mean, can you imagine, Camille, like being told on trade deadline day when, he had such a terrible time of it in LA, all of the questions and red flags about, his history, all of his stops, like how poorly things had gone. Bucks rolled the dice on him. And again, not an expensive dice roll given, as you guys discussed yesterday, like Marjon Beauchamp wasn't doing anything, wasn't going to play, wasn't going to be back.
And now he's a 2-way for the Knicks.
Yeah. So to bring in a guy like, a wild card guy like KPJ, and to be here now at the end of the season where obviously the Bucks record is, not where you would want it to be, but for him to be on this streak of 20-point games, to have like, especially the defense, be popping at times. He is a gambler, of course. He's had, periods where I think his point of attack defense has been disappointing. He's had a lot of other times where, I think his ability to ball hawk, but also, he has good size, good length and physical tools, and it gives him some switchability, which along with the Bucks' other wings, I think has really helped them. So for him to have meant as much as he has, it's pretty remarkable. And it's just been like, it's really weird to look back at the trade deadline now, because, you trade away a franchise legend, future retired jersey in Chris Middleton. You get back Kyle Kuzma, who has had, I think it's, I was on the radio yesterday with Sparky on 1250, and I think Sparky, let's say Sparky was on the I don't know, I would forget if he called Kuzma, I had said he's been terrible or what he said, but I was kind of like, well, I mean, he has not been consistently good. That has certainly been clear. The shooting obviously has not been where it needs to be. But he's had games, and he had another one tonight where it's like he has an efficient scoring night. And I think his defense has generally been good, and he's, I think, been useful defensively with his versatility.
Agreed.
So it's been kind of a very weird period for Kuz. And of course, Chris, again, would he have come back to play if not for the fact that he's on a tanking team with this knee injury? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But obviously Chris, ultimately like kind of washing out his season with another injury, makes you kind of feel like a little bit, I don't know, it's very mixed emotions, right? Because it's like, well, if you kept Chris, like, would he have just gotten hurt again, etc. So the fact that like, Kuzma has been such a mixed bag, and you lose Chris, and we've been seeing the Bucks without Dame now for this extended period, to think that, Kevin Porter Jr. first, before the Dame injury, like the amount of times he gave the Bucks that spark off the bench, running the second unit, fourth quarters where he randomly popped up. I think it was like the Clippers game where he had that huge fourth quarter, was not the first time. Was not the first time that he did this against the Timberwolves. So for him to have been first that like second unit spark plug, like 15 to 20 minute guy, and now to, over the past few weeks have developed into a guy that has obviously been playing a lot more for reasons you wouldn't want because of injuries to Dame. But I mean, he's earned all that time, and it's been remarkable. It seems like, 2 out of 3 nights, KPJ's like putting up these big stat lines, and the other night Ryan Rollins ends up being the guy. And whenever KPJ doesn't play well, it seems like Rollins has stepped up. So it's I mean, I need to see it in the playoffs. I don't know exactly what it means for the playoffs, but I think I'm very curious to see against a Pacer team that, with TJ McConnell on the bench has, and I'm already probably getting ahead of myself, right? Because I'm presuming the Bucks are going to get the Pacers, which famous last words here. But the Pacers second unit like killed the Bucks last year.
Yes, they did.
TJ being kind of the lead of that, and we saw in 3 games this year, the Bucks bench was the ones doing the punching, and they were the ones dominating. And TJ McConnell had like a minus 30 something in the last game they played, and KPJ was a big part of that. So yeah, I'm I don't know what the playoffs will hold. I don't know what this weekend will hold, Camille. But it's been fascinating just seeing Kevin Porter take advantage of this opportunity, right? I mean,
Yes.
And that's the weird part, right? We talk about how bad he was in LA, but I think we're seeing like that was the aberration, right? I mean, this is a guy who's played major minutes, been a very productive starting level NBA player, and the issue has been, maturity is maybe a kind framing of it, but yeah, on the floor at least for sure, just finding that balance. And obviously like playing here in Milwaukee, he's just seemed like a guy that has found a comfort zone and found, at least for the time being, a home where he's comfortable, and obviously, has fit in really well with this group, and they've needed all of it.
They truly have. And you mentioned how like the bench, we've seen it before where the Bucks bench gets punched. It was a game tonight against the Pelicans, of course, against the Pelicans, but you had Bobby Portis with 14 off the bench. You had Gary Trent Jr. with 17 off the bench. Kevin Porter Jr., as we have mentioned, 20 points off the bench. AJ Green only had 3, but of your 4 main rotation guys in this game before you got to garbage time and we're seeing Pat Connaughton and everybody so forth, you had a lot of scoring punch come from your bench, and that's going to be important for this team continuing to go forward. And since the calendar has turned to April for the Bucks, they have been getting some better results. Want to discuss the how and what we've seen gone differently for them coming up after this. NBA fans, you got to get ready, because when they swoosh, you save. And thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the very next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more points in a game during the regular season here, so you got a couple more days left for that, Dash Pass members get 50% off of an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. I mean, if that deal is in place, after 50-point performance, you can get you some wings, some pizza, whatever it is, delivered right to your door. Whether you're up late watching highlights, you just need a little snack, use that Dash Pass to grab something delicious while you save big. Make sure that you sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in the game, Dash Pass members get 50% off of an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. You must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Make sure you head over to DoorDash to learn more. Since the calendar has turned to April, the Bucks have been undefeated. We saw them close out March with 4 straight losses. They finished the month with a 7-9 record, and here they are in April now, 6 straight wins. Have you seen anything differently from the Bucks over this 6-game win streak, or anything that you're hoping to see continue through the playoffs for this team here? I should say over the last 2 games here. It's kind of like a mini playoff thing against the Pistons and then heading into the playoffs.
I mean, I hesitate. I don't want to act like there's been some revolution in what they've been doing. I think obviously there were, a number of games where the rebounding was obviously a huge issue, the defensive rebounding, right, which has been a problem whenever they've been down a big, which, typically has been since Brooke obviously has never hurt, and Giannis has generally been pretty healthy. It was obviously during the Portis suspension when Jericho Sims was not available, right? Mm-hmm. When Jericho Sims started playing, then they kind of got back to being a much more respectable rebounding team and in general defensive team. And so I think obviously getting Bobby back on Tuesday was enormous. And, for him to come from not playing for, whatever it was, 47 days
almost 2 months.
Yeah, to putting up, big numbers and being part of that lineup that flipped the game in the fourth quarter was huge. So I don't know if there's like a consistent drumbeat necessarily, between all these games. I think you and Justin talked about the fourth quarter scoring,
mm-hmm.
It's all small sample. I like looking at like, I'm like, when I look at stats and stuff, I will do, look at like splits, like offensive defensive rating. I don't know if I ever look at it for like fewer than 10 game samples, just because like there's so much noise and it's so like schedule dependent, and you get hot for a few games, and like sometimes like the broadcast will say like, oh, the last 4 games they're like 3rd in net rating. It's like, what does that even mean? Like that means nothing to me. So I don't know that there's any huge sort of differences. I think cleaning up just some of the egregious stuff that we saw on the glass, which to me is largely just a function of like size. Like he just got bigger and we're able to, do what you're supposed to do when you have guys that are, not all wings. And, I think also just, I don't think we've seen as many of just the poor miscommunications on defense, like blown switches and things like that. It just doesn't feel like they've been. And again, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they're playing on a string on defense and they're like
there's still room for improvement. It just hasn't been as bad as we've seen before.
There hasn't, but I do think it's been better. I think they've cleaned some of that stuff up, and that was something we've talked about. Obviously, with no Dame, you don't have an excuse to play poor defensively. You're playing a lot of guys that are young, have decent to very good physical tools, and you've got Giannis and Brooke defending the back line. So, really like the excuses are gone. So I think again, it's more about just kind of cleaning up the stuff that they had to clean up. And, obviously a lot of it is just Giannis beginning to look more like Giannis, right? Because I think that was something during, some of the wobbly stretches post All-Star. I think Giannis, they were winning games initially, even with Giannis not looking his ideal version of himself. And obviously, especially when Dame was out, everything becomes magnified. But the version of Giannis we've seen over these last couple of weeks, especially the playmaking burden that he's taken on and how well he's done it. We talked about the, clean games, right? Upping his assists, downing his turnovers, continuing to score super efficiently. That helps a lot. And so I think, just Giannis being Giannis, defense being just cleaned up, more solid, not kind of just doing some of the stuff as far as second chances, leak outs, easy buckets in transition. I think, again, not something you'd say is like, they've solved all the world's problems, but they've at least, gotten rid of some of the stuff that just made you want to tear your hair out.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, as you mentioned, it's very nice to have a top 75 NBA player on your team. Actually, I mean, the Bucks have two with Dame as well, but
Yeah.
Dame's out right now, leaning on Giannis, and being able to have him on the court is a beautiful thing. And especially without Dame, that playmaking piece to me for Giannis has been what's really stood out to me over the last couple of games, because Doc has talked about the importance of Giannis pretty much being everything to the Bucks. He has to, be aggressive looking for his own shot, but he also has to be aggressive in making sure his teammates can get good looks using his gravity to create for others. And he's been doing a great job at that while taking care of the ball in the process, because outside of the rebounding issues the Bucks have had, turning the ball over, they were just doing that a little bit too frequently during those games that they were losing, and they've been a bit cleaner with that as well. So continue to take care of the ball, continue to end possessions, getting the rebounds. Again, in this game against the Pelicans tonight, at times it was a little sloppy. Like, the Bucks were getting killed on the boards early on in this one. I think the Pelicans finished like plus 10 on the boards. But again, kind of a weird, funky game. And we had guys sitting early, especially when they knew the outcome of that Pistons game. So there's much, still much to see. But Giannis alone gives me a lot of confidence going forward. And I mentioned the Pistons. You've mentioned the Pistons. It's time to take an updated look at the standings after tonight's results in the East, and also discuss what's at stake for the Bucks during their last two games of the season against Detroit, because these games going to mean something. So we'll talk about that right after this. There is nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA game. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found GameTime, because GameTime makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer. And with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. And I love knowing how much money I'm going to have to spend to go and do something. Other reasons why I love using GameTime, because the last minute deals are fantastic. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever the case may be. You can grab last minute seats for the Bucks, especially with the playoffs coming up, and you can save big with their zone deals. Also get peace of mind being able to see the seat views before you buy in case you're going somewhere for the first time. You can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, tonight, taking a look around what else happened with some teams in the East that the Bucks care about. The Pacers beat the Cavs 114-112, and what that Pacers win means for the Bucks no longer are in play for the 4 seed, which felt like it was already out of reach, but now it's officially out of reach. The Pacers are 1 game behind the Knicks for the 3rd seed, but the Knicks do hold the season series over the Pacers 2-1. So what that means is if the Knicks win either of their last 2 games, that will lock them in the 3rd, Pacers in the 4th. And the Knicks' last 2 games are against the Cavs and at the Nets, while the Pacers have the Magic and then the Cavs. The Pistons, they got to win tonight as well. They beat the Knicks 115-106. And what that Pistons win means for the Bucks is that the Bucks now need to win one of these final 2 games against the Pistons to be able to secure the 5 seed. They're going to have a chance to secure that W tomorrow in Detroit. Second, have a back-to-back for both of these teams. Detroit had their game against the Knicks at home, so they're waiting in Detroit for the Bucks. And then the Bucks, of course, will see the Pistons again on Sunday in Milwaukee. So there was a chance going into tonight's game for the Bucks to secure the 5 seed. If the Pistons would have lost, the Bucks would have won, but that didn't happen because the Pistons got that dub. So now these games this weekend, Frank, against the Pistons, they mean something after all.
Yeah, I mean, we've been looking at those 2 dates for a while. I mean, I feel like maybe, I don't know, like weeks ago, I remember looking at the schedule and saying like, they play the Pistons the last 2 games of the season, and then seeing how the Pistons were surging and how the Bucks were not surging. It started to dawn on you that like, man, these could be very meaningful games for both teams. And so I wish they didn't matter. I wish the Bucks were
Same.
locked into their spot. But at a minimum, it's the pressures on the Pistons to win both games, and you just need the one. So hopefully, well, again, like hopefully you come out, go to Detroit, take care of business. You did it the one time you were there prior to tomorrow this season. Had that blowout win earlier in the season when I remember Giannis was like, wasn't he like 10 for 10 or 11 for 11 or something like that? Like he like could not miss a mid-range jumper, and they were just hitting tons of threes. I'm not expecting that easy of a basketball game tomorrow night, but it's pretty to imagine it. So on the one hand, like historically, we've seen the Bucks handle the Pistons for quite some time.
Yeah.
But this is obviously the best version of the Pistons that we've seen in a while.
Thanks.
And the Bucks have not been a good road team. And the Bucks have not been a team that I feel like has really risen to the occasion very regularly this season. So I think this is, it's a meaningful game. And certainly in that regard, as a test of like, all right, you won 6 in a row. How impressive those games were. Mileage may vary, but you were short one top 75 NBA player. So I think you can't be anything but happy that the Bucks have won 6 in a row, and they've needed all 6 of those wins in order to be in this position, to be in the driver's seat, to retain the 5th seed. So, so we'll see. I mean, I think there's, again, like this is the most meaningful game these teams have played since, I guess, the 2019
Playoffs?
First round. And that feels even like a stretch because that was like the least competitive series ever. So both teams have a lot to play for. There's obviously a fair bit of history with these teams, especially when you think about Isaiah Stewart and, the Giannis history with him. I assume Isaiah Stewart's suspension is over, right? I thought he got suspended a few games ago. So so that I think will obviously be something to watch. And, unfortunately, like Isaiah Stewart's been one of the, maybe not the best, but one of the better big man defenders of Giannis over the years, which, is partly why certainly in that game earlier this season, that was the Giannis show, that his ejection for that flagrant 2 was such a huge and big deal because they really do need him against a team like the Bucks, I think, to have a chance against Giannis. So, I think, Cade Cunningham, his coming out party this year, chance for him to obviously do something with the spotlight on him before he makes it to his first playoffs. And our old friend Malik Beasley, Camille.
Yeah.
He's had, I don't know if he's had 2 games. He had at least that one game where he was like a flamethrower for most of it. And I don't want like Malik, like getting to shimmy all over the Bucks this weekend and, putting the Bucks into the 6th seed because he went crazy and hit a ton of threes across these 2 games. So, and I do like Malik. I got no ill will towards Malik.
But it's like we don't want him cooking against the Bucks.
Not to us. Yeah, not to us, right? So it should be really fun. Again, cool to have meaningful basketball in the last weekend of the season. I hope the last game of the season is not meaningful because it means the Bucks won on Friday. But to have the last game of the season be at home and be kind of a quote unquote must win for playoff positioning, like that's pretty cool too, right? In the grand scheme of, basketball watching and, for all the stuff that people complain about the NBA regular season not mattering and the season being too long and all that, we've seen a lot of like last games of the season for the Bucks that have been kind of like, what is the point of this? And it would be nice to have one that matters and have the Bucks, again, ideally take care of business on Friday night, but if not Friday, hey, doing it more dramatically on Sunday, like I will accept that as well.
2 shots to win 1 against the Pistons. And for me, one thing I'm really looking at in this particular matchup, knowing how the Pistons get down, is just how the Bucks will respond if the game gets chippy. I feel like I should say when the game gets chippy, knowing how the Pistons like to play, knowing some of the guys they have over there. They have guys who like to talk as well. We know Bobby Portis historically has been somebody who also enjoys the art of trash talking. We've seen Kevin Porter Jr. get wrapped into that as well. So I think that's also a nice kind of like pre-playoff test going to Detroit in this environment against a team that likes to agitate you. Just to see how you can kind of keep your cool in a hostile environment, because again, come playoff time, that is going to be something that you're probably going to face. So it's nice to kind of get those tests in before they count for the playoff positioning in those games and so on and so forth. But I will say this, if the Bucks can go into Detroit tomorrow, Friday night, get the win, they would finish the season with a 20-20 away record, getting back up to 500 somehow after some really, really bad play on the road throughout this season. So it would be cool to also see them climb to 500 in the road column. But that'll do it for today. We will be
one note, Camille, as the Giannis stat guy. I was just crunching some numbers. So Giannis is at 30.4 points per game right now. Obviously, I really want Giannis to average 30 points a game for the third straight season. Could have been 4. He was at 29.9, I think, the year before his last one or his first 30-point per game season. He's at 2,004 total points right now. If they win tomorrow and then he sits on Sunday, he would only need to score 3 points tomorrow night in order to still be at 29.95. We'll round up to 30 points per game. If he plays in both games, he just needs to score 33 across the 2 games in order to still have that 30-point per game average. And I have not run the numbers because it depends on the shots he takes, but he is a shade over 60% from the field right now. I'm sure people, are diehard fans that listen to us probably know the stat. I think last year, what was the first time somebody averaged 30 points and 60% from the field? He now can join himself in that category. To do it 2 straight years. And so, lots of variations of, Giannis becoming the first guy to do 30, 10, 6, multiple years in a row. And again, I said I was going to take Giannis for granted tonight because there were other stories, but we'll end it on a don't take Giannis for granted note. And again, just the statistical dominance and the casualness of which he does that continues to be incredible. So, I think we all got maybe a little bit anxious when we saw him walking to the locker room.
I did at first. I'm not
gonna lie. Everybody started peeling off, which I don't know that I've ever seen that exactly before.
I have not.
Like a kind of line of people, it's like they were going to the Ubers or something outside. But yeah, so Giannis, and by the way, he is also now past. He moved a couple games ago, technically past the 65 game eligibility criteria. So he will make All NBA first team, lock it up. And that's probably all he'll make awards wise. But again, for him to just be, locking up All NBA first team, I don't know how many years it's going to be in a row now, 7, 8 years.
7.
So, is pretty remarkable. And, nobody else right now has had a streak like that. So he's in some very rarefied company. So Giannis, give us one more dominant performance. Let's lock in that that 5 seed. Although I will say, Camille, I want 2 more wins. I 48 wins. 48 wins is I would have loved to get to 50. 48 just feels so much better than 47 or 46.
We definitely want to see 46.
So yeah, let's win tomorrow night, and then hopefully Sunday, if everybody gets rested, then have the Bucks. KPJ can go for 30 and get them to 48 wins in a game that maybe doesn't mean anything. That's my ideal outcome for the weekend.
Yeah, look, that's what I would love too, because last season, I've said it many times before, last season we saw the Bucks finish the season 3-8 over their last 11 games. So seeing them finish this season strong heading into the playoffs would do wonders for my confidence levels in this team. But that'll do it for us here today. We will be back after the Pistons game on Sunday to recap the weekend. And then we will begin the playoff previews here on Locked On Bucks. So make sure you guys keep it locked in for Locked On Bucks. For Frank and myself, we will catch you guys later.